the real design, if I have to define, is something that begins when the landscape, the space for all the logical thoughts and thinking ends and begin the space for the magic.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy Devers, and this is Clever. It's our 200th episode, and we are celebrating with a very special guest. Today, I'm talking to the phenomenal Patricia Urquiola. Patricia is a true powerhouse of design and is widely considered to be one of the most lauded, in-demand, and influential designers of our time. Her prolific and profound contributions span architecture, interiors, product, furniture, textiles, fashion, art direction, and strategy consulting. She's made an indelible mark on the design of the built world through her now iconic works that offer a unique point of view with an approachable warmth and vibrant presence. She works with important international design companies, including Alessi, B&B Italia, Capellini, Ferragamo, Haworth, Cartel, Quadrat, Louis Vuitton, Moroso, and Rosenthal. Recent architecture projects include Il Sereno Hotel in Como, the Roommate Giulia Hotel in Milan, the SD96 Yacht for San Lorenzo, Das Du Hotel in Berlin, showrooms and installations for BMW, Cassina, Missoni, and more. And since 2015, she's been the creative director of Cassina. There are just too many accolades to list here. She's won several prestigious international prizes and awards. Her work is exhibited in museums the world over, and she has many times been named Designer of the Year or even Designer of the Decade by prominent international design publications. Her studio, Studio Urquiola, founded in 2001 with her partner Alberto Zontone, is now a team of around 70. With 18 nationalities represented and 15 foreign languages spoken, it's a very international community, with designers and architects collaborating in the most interrelated possible way. Studio Urquiola is frequently asked not just to design objects and architecture, but also to think about the future of mobility, workplace, and production cycles. She also leads the companies she works with to change, evolve, and innovate by reimagining entire processes, creating links between heritage craftsmanship and innovative technologies, and upcycling waste material. Her design point of view merges humanistic, technological, and social approaches, and she describes her design thinking as being at the intersection of challenges and breaking prejudices and finding unexpected connections between the familiar and the unexplored. She's led an extraordinary life, and it plays out like a who's who of creative masterminds. She's worked with or been mentored by some very significant figures in design history, including Achille Castiglione, Vico Magistretti, and Maddalena de Pavetta. And with boundless energy and insatiable curiosity, you'll hear her talk about her fascination with varied interests such as modern philosophy, AI, and Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party. For this one, you may want to follow along on the transcript. We've taken great care to hyperlink all of the significant design figures, movements, art, books, brands, and philosophers she mentions so that you can go down all of the rabbit holes you want. You can find that at cleverpodcast.com. Patricia's journey is nothing short of remarkable, and she brings us right along with her on a trip that feels like part intellectual obstacle course and part magic carpet ride. Here's Patricia.
I am Patricia Urquiola. I'm an architect and designer. I'm 100% Spanish, but I think 100% Milanese too, because it's the city where I live and work. We have a studio of architecture and design.
I'd love to back up to your origin story and kind of understand how you got to be who you are now. Can you tell me the story of your childhood? You're from Oviedo, Spain, yes?
Allora, sì, I come from the north of Spain, but Spain, as I live in Italy, they always think that they have a kind of Mediterranean origin, no? But I am from the north of Spain, and the north of Spain is the Atlantic side, and it's facing to the ocean. It's a kind of different, powerful idea, no, of growth. For example, I'm the second daughter of 3 children. Then I am the always in between.
Mm-hmm.
And the always in between is always
middle child.
Yes, I don't know. See, always in between. You never know. They forget you many times. See, you've got a portion of freedom always more than your brothers. So I have a big sister, but they were always focusing just to understand what to do or not to do. And I had a younger brother that was the male, right? Who was so nice, so gentle. Then I was in the middle. No, that was very, very. That's always interesting. My father was an engineer. Mm-hmm. And my mother did something, I think, nice. She created the family very young. And when we born, the 3 of us, she come back to study, and she studied English philology and philosophy in the 70s. Then she was going to the university or doing a lot of homeworks in her desk, in her room. I remember lesson, suffering, and that kind of a student attitude, I think was nice to see her when we were about 10 years old. And then I think was something she shared with us in a way that normally you don't share with your mother.
So you saw her being driven and curious. Yeah.
And suffering, the exam that never ended or
yeah.
things like this, no?
Rigorous and rugged.
And it was the end of the period of Franco, no? Then we were always moving to the south of France because the culture was coming from there, was our salvation.
Okay.
As my father was Basque. Okay. Obviously, always Atlantic and North Ocean side, but they were just in the frontier, no, with Pays Basque. I like it a lot that the grandparents, the Basque ones, they were coming always to visit. But I remember the grandmother, she was always doing for us Basque jackets with pompon, and I was always breaking them. Then it was my sister was always perfect, and me, I was so you were putting me something, and something was breaking. My mother always said at the beginning I couldn't understand you choose that profession because you were always breaking everything in home. I couldn't,
Why were you breaking things? Were you rougher on them? Were you playing harder?
Who knows?
Okay.
Who knows? I think I've got the lucky thing that I had a brother. Then I could always work and play with things, not only girls and Barbie things. I could play with a garage or with many other things that he had. Then we were always sharing, different ways of working, and possibly I was curious. And then you dismantle everything, no? That is a very good...
Yes, taking things apart. That makes perfect sense.
Yes, and this never get bright anymore, that is surely...
You still got it.
And then I grew up in this part of Spain where it's a culture quite interesting because it's about rain, about the seaside, the beach. For us was always a beach, it was a space with the same name, but it was always relative to time because sometimes you could walk and go to the beach because it was not raining. Mm-hmm. But secondary thing, because it was big and was large, then you could walk. The tide was the right tide. But in other moments where there was no beach, then this idea of beach, I think gave me the idea of temporality a lot in my education.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Those things, you keep them with you, for a long time. Or for example, my grandfather had a house just nearby that beach. We were always going in Salinas. In summertime, a lot of surfers were coming always to that beach, and in front of the house there was a big window, the biggest in the house, and then there was a little chair in wood with 3 legs, micro chair. Then good for me because I was really piccolina, really little, and I even ate sometimes the flies coming to the grass. Then there was this girl has problems because I was 3 years, I think was quite little, but I was there sharing the view, and then sometimes I was eating a fly. They were saying, why she eats flies?
Wait. You were eating flies.
I don't know. Yes, they always said that to me, that when I was little, there was, perhaps some problems that were already, very present.
You were hungry for life.
Who knows? Poor little flies.
But I mean, that sort of makes sense to me, the temporality and then the theater of the ocean in front of that framed window and you sitting there on the little three-legged chair eating flies. What a picture you just painted.
I see, but I remember that perfectly. My mother was one of the younger sisters. She had two elder sisters, and then there were always cousins but they were always 15 years elder than me. They were always coming from London when I was young. Oh. Then I was completely absorbed by the things that were coming in summer to that house from my cousins. So that was fantastic.
Yes. So aunts and cousins coming from London, bringing a sort of cosmopolitan cultural influence?
Something different.
Yeah, something different.
Yes, always.
And older women have a certain mystique to a young girl.
A lot of women with opinions in my house.
Yes.
A lot of crossover of that. Fantastic men, blah, blah, blah. But I think girls were very alive. For example, another decision that my parents had when I was adolescent.
Okay.
In that period, my mother, when more or less Franco died, and it was quite the end of 70s, and my mother wanted my father to go to Ibiza to have a place there, because they were saying Spain is not enough. We need a place that is changing our life, because really they needed a place to trust other things. And they got a very easy house in the countryside that, in that period was everything very hippie and very easy. Mm-hmm. And that was another very good idea, because we were moving there in summer, and Europeans, we do quite long holidays. And then after school, we were moving there, and then everything was changing completely. Then Mediterranean, no rules. This island went to move from one place to another place. There was something very different, really very good. A lot of macrame and...
Yes, end of the 70s, that would be macrame.
Si.
Can I ask you a question? When you say they took an easy house, what do you mean by easy?
Today, when you say Ibiza and a house, you think that, it was what a privilege. And in that period nobody wanted to go in Spain to Ibiza. And they were not Spanish people. And it was a place, there were not a lot of policemen, very easy, with a lot of Ibis, low profile, My parents, they were about 40 years old. And then they said, we need to go somewhere which is different, because they got in love with that, to understand things different. My auntie went with her family. She got another house there. Then we were 20, 30 person of family together in a garden doing a family.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Super nice. I say thanks to them.
Yeah.
We're still doing it.
Oh, amazing. How wonderful to carry that on through the generations. So it sounds like your family was very strong and opinionated, but also very open to new perspectives and actively seeking out changes of scenery in order to keep their minds and opinions evolving.
Well, I think in that period, a lot of people were like this. It was a fantastic generation, people moving in that period.
And so you're an adolescent in this period. It sounds very formative. Most teenagers go through some growing pains and have some angst or awkwardness, and sometimes getting ourselves into situations where we feel like we need to rebel, or where we need to really, really try on a new identity. I'm just wondering how you sort of worked through that stage in order to become an adult.
Can happen when you are adolescent, can happen when you are a bit elder than adolescent, but tendency a kind of temperament which is in some way creative, many times has a kind of fight in relation with what is the certainty of his own comfort zone, which is the family. And it was not easy with my parents, because they were really open to evolutive things. And I was saying when I was 13, perhaps I would like to do architecture. And my father said, "Oh, that's fantastic. When I was young, I was not so good painting and drawing, and was so academic architecture in his time." And he was saying it was ridiculous, because I think it was not about creativity; it was only about academic
Ah,
I'm very happy you can get into a work which is going to be creative but at the same time you are going to relate to space. The problem for me was not so much to get big discovery. Then I was the one in the middle that never knew what I was doing. It was very easy to disappear and to do things because they were not focused in the middle one. What I needed when I went to Madrid to study architecture, after 2-3 years being there, I was always a good student. That was something that for me was natural.
okay.
I was always reading, studying. And then they didn't look at me a lot because, she's a good student and nobody looks at you when you're an adolescent. This is a very good thing. You want to have freedom, good student. Then nobody knows anything about all the horrendous things you can do. That is the good news, no?
Okay, so you were stealthily taking advantage of your freedom and hiding in plain sight because you got good grades and you were the middle child. Beautiful. Makes perfect sense.
Say that.
Okay.
But when I was in Madrid, what I never could explain very well why I needed to move from Madrid to Italy. I needed to get new experiences, to change. At the end, moving from one country to the other one and getting out of my comfort zone, that is the argument. I think in some way, or because you discuss in family, or because there's something you need to create a distance with what they gave to you, what are your roots, even if they are fantastic or they are dramatic. I think many creative people, we create a distance because you need to find your roots, your personal roots. Then you need something that is very personal. I don't know, has to do with identity. And perhaps you take 20 years to do it all your life. But you need that distance because good things never come always from so comfort zones, no?
Right. So it sounds like you felt a combination of needing to sort of separate yourself from your comfort zone so that you could stand on your own 2 feet and really sort of investigate what it is that is meaningful to you separately from everything that you were offered. And I'm just wondering, at that point in time, you're looking at it with hindsight now, so you understand maybe where it came from. But at that point of time, what did it feel like to you? Like you just needed to get to someplace different?
When you are young, you have nothing. You have nothing in your hand. That is fantastic. First thing. It's not so bad news, I think. But, and you have a really white canvas always in your hand. And many times I remember perfectly thinking, that's never going to be a real place to do something, so nobody can tell you really how it's going to be your path, no? And there's no idea that you are going to have it even. But all this uncertainty is interesting.
It's an interesting place to be. And I've heard from a lot of people that naivete is actually a really beautiful, it's that white canvas that you're talking about. You don't know what you don't know, so you can't get in your own way.
But you move. You know that, for example, then for me, where I grow up, I said architectura is not in that city. And then when I was in Madrid, it was not enough. I needed to move and to put myself in another situation. And all these things, always they help because architectura was always the same. But the way I was approaching architecture in Madrid and with the other students, we were already in the 80s, no? It was all about, obviously, postmodernism. And it was very interesting because it was very strong. They came in the 80s, it's very strong. And when I moved to Milano, possibly this idea of postmodernism and architecture was interesting, but there was a Memphis movement, from Sotsas.
Yes.
There were other kind of things more related to tools for living in another way. There were the last interesting revolutions, very movements that I think for me were very interesting. And the last, at the same time, rationalist. They were already teachers. So they were architects as education, but they were working as designers too. They were writers. There were many things. And there was a kind of magic rationalism. That these two words, they should not fit, but they fit perfectly. And that was this Italian way of approaching the project, no? That for me has been really interesting. Through personages like Castiglioni, the brothers Castiglioni, that they had the luck to do an exhibition, then much later in the Triennale of Milano to do it in honor of Achille, one of them.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time celebrate the work of the different of the brothers, no personage like Solsas, as we were saying, and that is a personage incredible. I think that is the way he make us think about the project that always saying for me the real design, if I have to define, is something that begins when the landscape, the space for all the logical thoughts and thinking ends and begin the space for the magic. Then I like a lot this idea that always, putting the concept of design in a space which is making you move through other energies, and I like it a lot. And and there were coming many personages. There was one teacher that I like it a lot, and it was Maldonado. Tomás Maldonado. He was coming from Argentina. He was artist and doing a very interesting contemporary art approach with his brothers, because it was a kind of family, very interested in that way. Then he went to Europe, went to Ulm, that you can imagine that is the school, after the heritage of Bauhaus. Ulm is the school that really created the concept of module, of recreating all the more severe and logical and intelligent and valid pieces of design for the reconstruction of a Germany after all what happened in all Europe. And after doing that, he came to Milano, and he came to Firenze, and then to Milano. And he was, for me, this to get into a land of rationalists they have this other, at the same time, they have this kind of space for magic. It was so strange because I was coming from Ulm. Then I thought really there was not a space for that. And then they demonstrate me we were speaking a few times about this, and it was very nice conversation. And it's something that I think was very beautiful to this was Maldonado was a man really interested already in progettazione ambientale. That means environmental design already when it was before the beginning of this millennium, and he was already making us speak and think a lot about the idea of systemic thinking and systemic approach, systemic, all the kinds of system, the idea of complexity, to move comfortable in the density in what can be complex, and then putting architecture, design, and all the new attitudes in this. He was fantastic on that. And then, the first new ecological thoughts in my mind came thanks to Maldonado.
That sounds like a really, really fertile time. I can hear the way you speak about it, that it really lit you up.
You don't know very well what to do with all these things when you are young. They are there, and then the time helps you to work on them,
But did you also feel like you were part of a kind of movement that was growing? Did you feel like you were part of something?
What I think helped me to be comfortable there, I was coming from Spain, as I was the generation, I was part of a generation of when Franco died, and when I was young, then it was very important that we were changing rules completely. They were saying, you've got to change a lot of things. Then when I arrived to Milano, I think I was not feeling like a daughter. And then, when you are a daughter, you are very respectful. I was feeling like, we have to break rules and look at them in a very easy way. Don't be
okay.
Don't be too much respectful, which is never perfect. I always say masters must get into you. You have to interiorize them, but you have to understand what is for you very important for someone else. What can be a master for me can be thought in many ways, but then you cannot go out with an output that is too much relative to their work.
Right.
You must come out with your own output, which is nothing to do with all the incredible energy that you absorb from a master, no?
Yes.
Then that perhaps is in my generation in Spain was very clear, because really we had to change many things. I don't know. For me, it's normal. I hope that for many people too. So we ended now a book in Casina, for example, a company which I'm doing a kind of art direction, no, from 8 years, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a company that has from the beginning of my work always the company is going to be centenary now, but at the same time, it's a company that we had to do this year an anniversary, a 50th anniversary, and about a decision that the company took at a certain moment. It was a company already working with incredible creative people from the 50s. But they decided to, especially in the 70s to the 73, just because now is the 50th anniversary, to create a kind of division that was called I Maestri, the masters, because the company began to work with the foundations of Le Corbusier, Charlotte Perriand, and Jeanneret.
Mm-hmm.
They asked to produce, reproduce part of the éléments de rangement, you can call them in many ways. That was the way they were calling them. Those a collection of different pieces from their fundaments for thinking what is the products to arrange an ambience, no? And they began to do it in the 60s, but in the 70s they said that is so interesting that perhaps we have to go to other foundations, the people that they've been really important at the beginning of rationalism, and they gave the value as Rietveld, you have to know, they went even to Macintosh, or they went to Asplund, different architects that they asking to the foundations, can we reproduce and get into production what is being important in that master, no? These things came like an organized part of the company and the production, which was always living with what the other contemporary designers were working in the company. And all this, at the end, has been very interesting because we are celebrating now with a book, a very nice exhibition we did in Salone, no? And in reality, was so interesting to be there with 15 foundations of the different master, but because now we see the things from another point of view, a lot of people that were working in the company that perhaps they passed away, as for example, Vico Magistretti, they became masters, just to explain you, or Gio Ponti or other fantastic ones. And to look at that, understand how in that period of the 73, that was beginning of 72, there was the learning from Las Vegas, just to understand as the book, from Venturi, and was the beginning of all this postmodern moment of ferment. And there was the idea of, the museum is not anymore the museum, the city is broken, and then, the domestic landscape can be even our museum. And then those pieces came into our domestic landscape as part of the values of all the last research in architecture. All these things get blended in that period especially. And it's very interesting that today those things for us are quite obvious, but I think Casino is a company that really did a big effort in that way. And I'm very honored to be working with them. And then we come back to the word masters, as we were saying. Masters is something that people that they had a lot to say in a certain moment, and they did a lot to change, a lot to do in a brave way. And those pieces they got through time, filtering the values in a fantastic way. And many times they came into our domestic landscape, and it's very interesting that to defend a company that is still doing all this with a lot of attention. Obviously, is not the only argument about design. The domain of design today has a crossover much larger than furniture and representation of the first pioneers. But they are pioneers, and it's very interesting that part of my work is to take care of this with a nice team,
It is very interesting because it's a sort of stewardship of history and context and the mindset from which things grew and culture was informed. So that's your art direction with Casino, which you've been doing since 2015. But I do want to set the stage for your very early career. From your studies in Milano to your early career, how did you get your professional footing?
First, it's fantastic because you never think at the beginning of your career that you could ever have your own studio. It's the first thing that is fantastic. How we get into this work because you like it and because you think I want to work with someone which is good because as I'm never going to have my own studio because that was for me, I thought was quite impossible. Then I went to work with De Padova.
Mm-hmm.
De Padova was a company. They were editing design because already in the Faculty of Architecture in Milano, there was a lot of design inside my education. Then design and architecture, there were two levels of project that could live together. And for me, I was comfortable in that dimension. Then in the Padova, I knew that Vico Magistretti was working there because he was the companion of the woman, Maddalena de Padova, the owner of the company. Then I said, if I go there, perhaps I can work with him. Then he was part of my... And then this happened. I've been there about 6 years, something like this. And I had the luck to work many afternoon because he was in a certain age, this... designer and architect Vico Magistretti. He was in a moment of his life that he was calm. He was teacher in London. He was teacher in Royal School of Arts and he was coming back. But in the day, normally in the afternoon, he was coming to us. And I was the technical office. Then there were not a lot of people. Then really there was a very direct relation. He was always saying, well, that today, for me, I'm like a good doctor. Sometimes I go to a convention out of my city. Sometimes I go to teachers, sometimes to London, which is a honor. But then my life has a kind of routine, no? But you are not gonna work anymore in that kind of routine. He knew already the complexity that was coming, no? And I liked that because he was saying, don't be afraid. You've got sign, go on. He was always so nice saying, for me, it's been very, very important. Him as Maddalena de Padova. And they made me do the first piece of design, signed piece of design and things like this and co-signing. At the same time, I opened a little studio with two of my friends. They were students with me in architecture and we did a little studio. It was super nice, but was not working. I understood that I needed to go back and to do something more. Then I began to work with Piero Lissoni, that was an architect, which is like a big brother because he's more of my generation, just a bit elder than me. And he had already a studio that was running, working very well. And he was working with Capellini, with companies that I thought in that period were fantastic. I worked with him 5 years. Then I closed my studio. I worked for another studio. Then I went back, and then that was very important for me because that gave me another and larger vision, another time. And then arrived already the 2000. And then I said, okay, open my own studio. From that moment, I began to work by my own. And things were much easier than what I thought.
Well, that's good news. Why were they much easier than you thought they would be?
Because when you're young, I think many things are very easy because I think it's important to approach what's in your hand to live. I was comfortable, but as having the responsibility of studio and have my voice and to can live from that, that was complete. I thought would be more difficult. And this, when I began, I think I had already a path. Things were working. People were curious. Then everything was fluent. No, there are different moments in your life that you find a wave that moves you in a fluent way and can be in different. It's not only in a professional way. Yeah? I'm speaking in many ways.
Yeah.
And in relation with, I have two daughters with 10 years of distance in between them. I've got to have to find many times the wave to get into their path, and but I was more mature than for me was an exercise more comfortable to approach. But I think there are moments when you say that I want that, to say, I don't know how, but then you get onto that and things are fluent. It's not always fluent. It doesn't have to be. Now we are in a moment we are looking, I was listening the conversation in between Harari and Mustafa Suleiman from The Economist. Mustafa, the man who wrote now The Coming Wave about AI, and Harari, the philosopher from Homo Deus, and a serious conversation about AI. If AI can agency, even if it can have as Suleiman was saying, a kind of empathic way of agency. It's a serious argument, capito? Then we are getting into another conversation. It was a very interesting conversation. I just sent it to my daughters immediately, capito, to say, let's get informed about what is in this moment, this serious agent of uncertainty that we have in our hands.
Yes.
It's going to be very good. It's going to be complex. We are going to, the human side is going to be in a side, because that's going to come a kind of more intelligent agency of problems that at the end, how can we manage many of those things? No, it's not only about, I'm a creative, they are going to take me my energy. It's not so little arguments. It's a serious, enlarged argument.
So it sounds like you're avidly, voraciously curious and consuming information and really grappling with the complexity of AI and the coming implications and sharing it with your daughters, which I love.
But I've got a daughter which is 18 years old, and she's beginning in London in the university to do architecture.
Oh.
And I was saying to her, then we went to see the exhibition of Marina Abramovic. That was an incredible, finally serious exhibition about the whole work. And he's a person that I had the luck to know, and sharing with her, with Sophia. It was very interesting to get into that. At the same time, getting a book for that, and then, and saying, now you are going to get into this faculty, speaking about architecture, in the middle of this wave. What is happening? Then it's very important that we cross over a lot of information. Yes, surely.
Yes, absolutely. And what a beautiful picture you just painted of a very intersectional experience in terms of being with your daughter. There's a generational component to that. There's a art, architecture, tech, AI, human evolution kind of thing going on.
Marina is the first woman doing an exhibition in that museum that is at the end of the Royal Academy, of Arts. Finally is done, and is first woman, but she's all about many virtual and spiritual and different ways to research our possibility of communicating with others, or the antennas of art. Then I think it's very interesting, because in this moment I think her energy, her human energy, is very interesting, and it's very nice to connect these things.
Yes, I love that you explain it as the antennas of art. That makes me want to ask you about the virtual and the spiritual and the AI. What's your relationship to all of that?
Well, AI, I don't know how to put so well in the middle of that.
Yeah.
We will see, because it's more about intelligence that is getting more intelligent than us. Then perhaps it's not about, the magic or what you were saying, which is the more spiritual. I think we are in a civilization of which is very relative to image, not to the perfect image. I think in moments like these, where even if we have a photo, an image of us that gets into the net, in that virtual, as you are saying to me, in that virtual part of our life, even we modify that to make it even more perfect. This society of image, which is, I think, in some way, I think in this moment is a moment to understand what is in the back of that. People which are interested in thinking in the other side of what is this first visual layer of image. There are many ways, many different artists or philosophers or thinkers, or many ways. I think we were friends with a person that I've been including a lot in the work we were doing with Cassina, or with different things, which is Emanuele Coccia, and he's a young philosopher, Italian young philosopher, teacher in the École des Hautes Études à Paris, in Paris, and he teaches a little bit in Harvard last year. And then he's a man very open and to interconnect many arguments. He did a book about the philosophy of home, and we have a lot of nice conversation about today, even as designers and architects, the way we control the space is through the meter. How we can measure is been always through the centimeters, the meters, the inches. When we can, it's not important, the system, but it's not anymore enough for the virtual part. Then if we are speaking about tools that are enlarging our powers of our hand for drinking, a glass of water is the prosthesis of our little hand. The seat is, like a third leg to be having a report, and like this you can go on. All the physical prosthesis, and it's part of my work every day, even the space and everything. But the prosthesis of our mind, he was doing very nice tests about this. The prosthesis about our mind, they are very different, as the smartphone. Those are prostheses of for our head. They are very different. We cannot work with measurements, the normal measurements of an architect. And all this space, which is virtual, today we live the virtual and the physical together. But if I'm an architect, I have to work in both. It's absolutely necessary. Then I don't have the same ways of measure. Then it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Then I think we have to enlarge the instruments to create a project. And there is a lot of space. There are corridors of communication. I remember, for example, Guarda, during the pandemics, no? And I was in home, like everyone, trying how to enhance my work, to work, for example, with Hayward, which is a company that we are working for 10 years. And at the beginning, when they asked me to not only do product, but to do a work that was a bit more enlarged, to interact with the space, to interact with the teams, different teams of work, to work in a enlarged way, to work as architect. We did an hotel Hayward. We did it in that period, even without me going there. But at the beginning of our relation, I put a lot of energy saying to them, I'm not going to be all the time with you because it's in Michigan. It's not so easy. Then let me come a few times, but it's impossible that I'm all the time there. Then let the teams, the team of architecture, the team of design, the team of engineers, to come to Milano too. Then like this, I don't ask they come a lot, but they come sufficient that we create a kind of interactive human relation that then we are connected physically, mentally, and then even if we get into a virtual way, we know each other. And then you've been in my table, you've been in my chair, and I've been in yours.
Yeah.
And then we were a team and we had all this experience. Then we were very comfortable. They needed to do a hotel in the city and we didn't even not coming there because we knew the team. We were so confident. I was very proud of that. And in that time, one of the other things I couldn't do, and I didn't know how can Maxi, which is a museum from Rome in Italy, a good friend, a person that I know, Domitilla Dardi, she asked me, why don't you be part of a little project? Casamondo was a project done with Forma Fantasma, which is a very interesting duo of design Italian that I like a lot. They were giving the principles of the project. And each of us designer had to create, like for 1 week, 3 images a day. In the Instagram, creating our avatar, which was me. The argument for me was, working at home. Then I had to create for 1 week. It was my time. I began to work with in a virtual way, doing this kind of very playful vignette, a lovely little history about this avatar. Finally, was me with my wings. Finally, it was me with my dog that was doing with me a lot of things from yoga. And at the same time, we were sharing the computer because I don't want to be with my plants. Then he was working in connecting. We were doing a lot of in my virtual world. I had a lot of space, a certain freedom that I don't have in my real world. And it was fun. It was nice. And I liked this occasion because at the end, the project had a lot of sense for me. Then make me think, if I think from this point of view, it's so different because I have the metrics are others. Then I have other space of freedom for doing it, other limits, but other space of limit. Then but it's been very interesting. Then I said to you 2 examples. Now, in a period where I couldn't do anything more than, taking care of your plants in home if you have them, or your family or making the bread, as many people did. We share things in different virtual ways. If we were doing a map of each person, each one who could do in a virtual way, really, how was his own experience? It's very interesting. And we did, for example, out of the box, a kind of conversation with the person that for me were very interesting. And I could give them the relation with them to others because I couldn't give to Casina all those things. Then I was giving the only thing I had, the relation as, for example, Olafur Eliasson. I got the luck to have this fantastic little relation to share with others. And we did. Then in other occasions, I would never think to share that or to give to that the value,
Right.
Then corridors of virtual, the spiritual side, I think is something that perhaps is not today, it's not the conversation. I think I was saying to you, is have to do with the liturgic side of life, the magic side, or anything which is the wrong side, which is in the back of the perfection, which means the human side.
Yeah.
There is a lot, and the virtual corridors of communication, there's a lot to work on them, a lot. As designers, as architects do.
So when you described meeting the teams with Hayworth and being in each other's spaces, what I always am very impressed with is this idea that when you're in somebody else's space, you're receiving so much information, so much communication from them that is nonverbal, that is simply about the energy in the space, the objects they have, the way they live that you pick up from looking around them.
Yes.
That helps you know a person without having to go through the process of actually asking the questions and listening to the answers. And then when you leave, you take that with you in a quantum spiritual sort of way. You've been in their intersubjective field and you have a sense of them that you can carry with you. And you described that so well, but also how that is what made your virtual collaboration so successful is because you had that already.
I choose in my life, all my work is about no verbal language.
Yes.
And this is something that when I was adolescent already I had very clear in my mind. I decided to do architecture because of that. Because I said, in some way, would be something creative. That means you're going to create a kind of vocabulary or a kind of language. You're going to speak something through a space. That was to study architecture, no, for me. And it's still been, for me, very important to stay connected to think about materia or regenerated materia, which is one of the most fascinated, and biomateria, then another argument, which is even the one which is, I hope, is coming into the real system of tools, like in these 5 years that AI is going to change everything, I hope that other things are coming too, because even if they are not going to be any more important and we are going to become all of us just little gardeners, but I would like to have the tools to get into better conversation even with my plants, and to understand how to have many new tools, to understand many things from all the other species. I think.
Well, there's a psychedelic revolution happening too. So.
It's another thing that but that is not afraid in me. I think to enlarge the human window, to a larger window. When you don't have in front of you the gestalt relation, nature and you, but you are part of that nature, or even there are many ways to affront. There are a lot of philosophical ways to think about this, but you are part of it, this evolving circumstance that you are part of it with all the good and bad. I think it's interesting that is becoming always more clear,
Yes. And as it becomes more clear, it also becomes more complex.
See, I was listening the other day, this person that we're speaking about, listening to the language of whales, because they, marine biologists, use this technology to make contact with them, just to understand many things that are going to be very helpful for the new kind of languages. Our masters They larger them from the humanistic ones, I think perhaps in the Oriental philosophies, many times, they were really, I think, more open to understand that masters were coming from small, immense, and not only coming from humanistic things. Perhaps we have to learn a lot, or we have to rewind a lot, no? But it's how much in this moment with the companies we are trying to look and say, allora, are we we are rethinking the processes, the way we do? What about the whole company? Rethinking how to really understand material in another way, or the way we get into the technologies that for years they were just renovated but growing. Now we are not so much interested in renovating and growing. Perhaps we are doing the same product with a technology which is less important or less new, but perhaps we think is renewing other things. So we are really looking to the way we produce in different perspectives and crossing many of them. And I think that is very interesting, Echo. I think the parameters to define what is good and what is not change so fast that we have a kind of period that there is not a set formula. And it's very interesting what is happening in this moment from that point of view.
As you're describing this period that we're in where we have to rethink everything and the parameters are changing, do you recognize yourself as a pioneer of a new era?
I think if I say no, because I feel I am a generation which has been in the middle of passage. Then all of us, we are when you say you define yourself as a designer, we are in a moment when we say we are all designers. We even we understand that plants, they been the first modifying, they were the first designers, and then the strong designers. Then what I say, pioneers. Perhaps I am part of our generation, which is in the middle of two ways of thinking. Possibly, I come from a generation that they was so materialist in some way, but stupidly materialist that finally today, perhaps we become really materialist because we understand and we focus on material to understand. Finally, we use the word in a way that perhaps has a possibility, also to make me think in a positive way, get really materialist, get us really concerned. And so I think, I hope the young generations which are in front of me, they are the ones they are really have in front of them. So if I feel like a generation of passage, me more, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've described that in so many ways, this temporality, these corridors of communication, the passages of your life, and also
we are pioneer in this, and this is possibly because we need to approach this in a different way. Yes, we are enlarging the measurements of what means the space. Then they said to you, speak about with any interiorist architect, say, what is, say to me which are the new things. Then you cannot speak about, we are thinking about lighting and colors. And this is all ridiculous. In this moment is how much we can give to people a way to live in a domestic land space or in a proper spaces that they can feel a certain well-being but it's not only about that. In this moment we are considering things which are a bit larger than this, all the uncertainty in all these arguments that we were saying before, they are in our head, and the land under our feet is a little bit moving too. Then pioneers in the way that we know that now is like this, and anything we are touching in a project, even if it's a little project, is connected to a larger object, which is what is material working. That is material which is a natural one, like a marble, or is a regenerated plastic. You are connected to an hyper object, which is something that you can't control, or you have to deal in another way. Then layers of relation with what is for us the world in many ways at the same time. Anything you are doing, you're thinking about something you are producing. You have to think from the beginning the way it's going to die, how it's going to be dismantled. But it's that, I think, in some way, in the way we were working, in my experience in Italy, searching always a kind of quality of techniques, always there was always this idea of understanding the what about the time and the piece we are doing? What about the quality of the materials? It's interesting that get old, and what means that gets old. We always can get old because people are still giving it value. It's not because the material is resistant or resilient. It's because the energy which is in the project is resilient, and then people want to keep your daughter or someone else want to have it or want to recycle.
Mm-hmm.
What it's not only a question of resistant material. It's a question of how many values are into a project that they can keep interested and filtered in a good way in the time that can be revaluable and reused. Then it's a complex argument which is fascinating.
Yes.
Today we have the double layer of physical and then all these new prostheses for our mind, which are, we need to work a lot on them too. And then to understand how to fulfill this virtual work in a lighter and different way.
Yes, it's a new frontier. And I guess that's one of the reasons I see you as a pioneer, because you're thinking about this and you're thinking about what the shape, the materiality, the value, the limits, the freedom, the interactivity, the energy of this virtual space is. And I really appreciate that about you.
Well, thank you. I will like to reborn, capito, and to begin today. Really, I'm not joking. I think it's really things are changing so much that I use too much time of my life. Yeah,
you're timeless.
Yes,
you're timeless. Your energy is
timeless. It's not even. It's I think timeless, Marta, can be so dangerous argument. I think you always have to be always the daughter of the time you're living now. Then like this you evolve, and then you keep. I think you keep your adolescent side into your 80 years body. You know what I mean? I see my mother, which is 88, is going to be now, and she's still having a strong, the little philosopher inside. I like her. She did a few moments of big change in her life. She's still been very curious even about me, about my nieces, and she compares and she gets into the mood. She's good. She's good.
Nice. What a great model. And I love that you challenged the word timeless. I think it's important, and that,
it's a killer, that word. Yes, I think it's better you represent what is your interest in this moment. We are never the same.
Yeah.
And then I hope I had different moments and different Patricias in all my life. And I keep on creating a new one, and a new one, and a new one, and a new one, and for the time I have. Which is just time. It's just my time, which is always a short time, for all of us, in relation with many things, But we are enjoying speaking. I forgot I'm speaking and someone can listen. That is good. I don't know if it's bad too, but it's good because it makes me not think about that, which is...
I love it. I love it so much. Thank you for sharing so generously of yourself. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to broadcast about yourself that you feel is important to share as a daughter of the time that you're living in?
I think this idea of complexity is very important. To enlarge those kind of parameters for me is important. Another thing that I for me is beauty is always. I was sending to one of my daughters to this little instrument that you can connect and you can use as a music player, some wooden tools and even a plant, and you can play a very simple, like a little instrument. And I'm always more and more curious on how can we get more ways to install conversations which are not just our conversations, different kind of creative conversations with the media, with what we are part of this nature and artifice all together. More conversation. I think possibly is the democratic way of thinking that we have as human, and dialogue and conversation is I think is the only weapon we can have. Different conversation, find new languages for conversation. Not only that. All these things are super important for me.
wouldn't it be wonderful if we could evolve so that we could hear frequencies that we can't currently hear? Or at least we could design translators that could communicate with our dogs and our plants, that could translate frequencies of other energies that we don't currently understand so that we can emit instead of converse.
They are fantastic people doing it already, I think. Then those are the pioneers. You know, when you say to me the word pioneer, I would like to say to you, no. I want to be, this upgraded pioneer, which is 6 now, then they are doing this. That would be fantastic to go to see Donna Haraway in Santa Cruz, that she's like, for me, like an El Dorado, this incredible biologist and feminist and philosopher. I think in art, she gave a lot of energies. And to go there one day, I will love to arrive and say, just hello. I even look at, I love to look sometimes in Google Maps, the time from one place I like to another place I would like to be. And more or less about, I think, 10 hours, I think I will arrive to the hotel where Judy Chicago lives in the Belen Hotel. I went to Brooklyn to see her. One of the work she did, there was this triangular table with all the voice for the woman that never had the voice and blah, blah, and fantastic. I have the book too, and I like it. Today to do another one, there will be with more enlarged, because it's not anymore a problem about women, it's about many others, the dinner party, to create a kind of dinner party. In my fantasy, I go to the one woman, to the other one by car, as I did in America many times. Then in this case, I will do this from California to New Mexico, no, capito? To see two fantastic women from past that for me, they have to do a lot with future. Fantastico. This is my dream, my lovely dream.
I love this dream. If I could be a fly in your road trip, but don't eat me. Patricia, this has been so enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. For a transcript of this episode and more about Patricia, including images of her work, head to cleverpodcast.com. If you like Clever, there are a number of ways you can support us. Share Clever with your friends, leave us a 5-star rating or a kind review, support our sponsors, or hit the follow or subscribe button in your podcast app so that our new episodes will turn up in your feed. We love to hear from you on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, X. You can find us at Clever Podcast, and you can find me at Amy Devers. Stay tuned for upcoming announcements and bonus content. You can subscribe to our newsletter at cleverpodcast.com to make sure you don't miss a thing. Clever is hosted and produced by me, Amy Devers, with editing by Mark Zurowinski, production assistance from Alana Nevins and Anushka Stefan, and music by L1011. Clever is a proud member of the Surround Podcast Network. Visit surroundpodcasts.com to discover more of the architecture and design industry's premier shows.
And we are going to become all of us just little gardeners.